Welcome to the Brand Doctor Podcast, strategies that help entrepreneurs build reputable and profitable brands. Here's your host, Henry Kaminski Jr.
All right, guys, we are back once again with another Brand Doctor Podcast episode. Today I have an amazing guest, and I will introduce him very, very shortly. But I'm just getting some stuff set up on Facebook. You guys know how I do it. Let me just share this to a couple of pages, and we are good to go. All right. Boom. So today's topic of conversation is what drives business success. And it's funny. I actually met our next guest on a JetSmarter shuttle flight. And it just so happened that we were going to the same networking event. And we get to the event. We're like, oh, shit, we didn't know that we were going to the same event. So, all right, guys, I know he's behind closed doors. I got to get him out here. Let's welcome Jason Myers from Jason Myers.
Hey, Henry, it's great to be with you today.
What's going on, my friend?
Man, 1,000 things, all great stuff. We're cooking with gas now. I
love it. You know, it's funny. Like, I follow you on social media, and like I always think of the saying, "Where in the world is Carmen Sandiego?" And because you fly a lot, you travel a lot, and you're bouncing all around. So I was like, "Where in the world is Jason Myers today?"
Exactly. Yeah, it's the common question I get from friends and business associates is, "Where are you right now?" Because the answer is always different. Rarely am I home, actually. So anyway,
so
it's good to be with you.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you taking the time to spend with us. And so, you know, I know Jason Myers as sort of the Marcus Lemonis of entrepreneurship. And so, you know, I know you're a very, very successful guy, and you know, you help other business owners and other businesses really turn themselves around and become very profitable. And so I want to talk about, you know, what drives business success, because I know you know a lot about that. When we were talking offline before the show, you brought up this trifecta that you help your clients with, and the businesses that you support. So I want, first and foremost, for those that don't know Jason Myers, let's give the brief bio. You there, Chief?
Oh, yeah, you cut out on me.
Okay, so the brief bio of Jason Myers for those that don't know.
Oh, from me. Okay. Yeah. So I have this really interesting mix of entrepreneurial and corporate experience. So in my entrepreneurial journey, I started with my first brick and mortar business when I was 16. And it became successful kind of right away, which sets you up for some interesting dynamics to happen. You begin thinking you're smarter, better than you actually are. So I learned some lessons later on when I opened my second business, and I got the opportunity to. I found this opportunity in wireless telecom to get involved and actually take over underperforming operations. And so I did a lot of hired gun turnaround work. And so, you know, over the course of like 11 years, I did a lot of internal work. We did a lot of mergers and acquisitions. We sold different divisions off, and I was always a participant in these crazy projects to, you know, acquire something, grow it, get it ready for the next level, and hand it off to somebody. And so I learned a whole lot about business on their dime, and made some mistakes along the way, and got to, you know, have that safety nest of the corporate thing, but all along the way, I was actually doing consulting for small businesses, and I was investing in small businesses as an angel investor. And so I got to understand what that is all about, and eventually said, I've done a really good run here, but I think it's time to go out and start my own business. And so I went out with a friend of mine. We started a business. It's a typical story of starting, in your home office, in your garage, and, shipping product to customers and stuff. And we grew that to 272 on the Inc. 500. That business was an online retail company, e-commerce, back in the mid-2000s, way before a lot of the people that are into it now. And we got to kind of grow up under the wings of the Amazons and the Walmarts and the Sears and Newegg and Buy.com and all these different companies. And we had a portfolio of different sites, but what we had done, the magic of what we had done was we actually created software to power that whole business. And so when we did the deal to sell that company, what we were selling really was the software. And software is much more valuable than relatively low margin e-commerce businesses. And that wasn't my first software play. I'd always been involved in software, built my first profitable website back in 1997. And said, the internet is cool. And so went on to invest in a bunch of different companies, got involved in another software as a service business, and we sold it to their biggest competitor. And so that kind of rolled forward into the idea of creating a company, doing private equity, acquiring small pieces of, or in some cases all of, small businesses, and then charting a course for them to improve and position them for sale at a higher exit multiple down the road. That's kind of what I've been up to, my life, I guess.
just buying and selling businesses here and there. No biggie.
Yeah, just a little, buying and selling. Yeah.
I love it. So, and that's one thing about you, Jason. Do people? So I'm from New Jersey, and people from New Jersey, New York, they like to shorten people's names after about 3 minutes of knowing them. So right. if I call you Jay from here and there and you're not comfortable with it, just give me a virtual slap.
Yeah, no, that's all right. My grandmother, we had lots of people in the family with the letter J for their first initial. So I would listen to her call me every J name in the book, but I knew who she was talking to. So I'm used to it.
All right. Good.
Back in my DJ days, I was Jam Master J. It works.
I love it. So yeah. So I just wanted to clear the air with that. So let's get into the conversation of what drives business success. So you have a ton of experience with working with, compromised businesses or businesses that are struggling, right? And you found this trifecta, like I mentioned, of how you turn these folks around and what drives business success. So can we talk about those three pillars, one by one?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you boil it down to a soundbite, what holds businesses back is a lack of execution. So everybody's got ideas, right? Ideas are a dime a dozen, and you can say that ideas are actually worth nothing without the execution. And so that's why if people have an idea and they go to seek investment from somebody, like in an angel scenario or venture capital, the investor won't sign a non-disclosure because it's just an idea. You haven't built a business yet. There's actually nothing proprietary about what you're talking about because you're one of probably thousands of people that have had the exact same idea and they didn't take action on it either. So until you actually start the business and start generating activity and stuff, there's nothing unique about what you're talking about. And so it's about execution. And what I found that holds the execution side of things back is that it really comes down to three things. It's mindset. It is having a strategic and tactical plan that's dialed in. And then the third piece of this is marketing. And if you look at the top real 4 reasons that businesses fail, the number 1 reason businesses fail is a lack of effective and efficient marketing, which is why I think what you do with the branding and stuff is so critical. It's something, if people get it wrong, they will not succeed. And as they have their challenges growing their business, they've got to keep their mindset screwed on straight, not just of themselves, but of everybody around them, people that are working in the organization. They may be a small shop, or they may become a little bit bigger. That mindset is critical. And then the external people, the people around you, right, that are constantly, filling your mind with whatever. You've got to make sure you're managing some of that. So it's really that 3, I call it the triad. It's mindset, it's strategy, and it's the marketing.
I love it. And that's one of the things that I sort of shifted in my business. Once, I saw it coming where graphic design was becoming quite the commodity. I said to myself, how do I differentiate my uniqueness in the industry? And what I realized was, anybody can open up Photoshop and figure it out and play and get an end result somehow. It might not be the best looking thing, but they'll figure it out. And when Fiverr came out, it was like, now what do we do, right? Now, the $100 jobs that I was designing at the time are now $5 somewhere online. So what do I do? And it took a while for me to figure it out. But what I realized was the strategic piece is what separates you from everyone else. And so
absolutely,
I've gotten to the point now where, I know who I want to work with. And it's if people want a logo, or if they want, a print ad designed, like, I'm probably not your guy. Why? Because I get more satisfaction at working out of the strategic side of things. And listen, like I said, anybody could put an ad together. Anybody could put a logo together. Mm-hmm. But if there isn't a strategy behind it, if there isn't marketing that is smart, created behind it, you're like you just said, you're going to fall flat.
Yeah, there are a ton of products and services that no longer exist on the marketplace because they were ineffectively marketed, right? They didn't grab the attention of the marketplace. And you look at one of the most basic marketing kind of principles, it's the AIDA principle, right? You have to attract their attention and their interest and drive their desire and compel them to action. And so if your brand is wrong, you're really starting out on a at a deficit that's hard to overcome. And I think it's brilliant what you've done because, basic graphic design is a commodity, but the strategy required to really create a brand that can stand the test of time, get the attention of the marketplace, is congruent with what the company's actually doing. That's where the magic is. I was in a Facebook group the other day and somebody posted their flyer, and it's a fine flyer. They've got a little business going and it's growing and everything. But I look at the flyer and their logo, which I'm sure they're married to because we all do this, right? You get fixated on it's got the logo, it's got to be just right. I'm going to put it on my business cards, I'm going to put it on my truck, I'm going to it's going to be everywhere. It's going to be on my website, all over social media. Well, you look at the website, and I'm not going to tell you exactly who this is or what it is, but their business name was Simply Something. And the word simply was written in very, very ornate script. To which, to me, that's like it's incongruent. You're saying it's simple, but the word is complex. Make it simple. Make it look simple. And so, I gave them the feedback, and it's worth the price charged, I'm sure. But, at least in their mind, right?
I talked about consistency today from an internal and external standpoint as well. Basically, I created this little scenario, and I said, if you saw a bum on the street, would you do business with him? And 9 times out of 10, we probably wouldn't. And we, like I said, we would probably grab our children and hold them a little bit closer and try to navigate around that person, as best we can. And then I said, if the opportunity would present itself, would you do business with Heidi Klum? And I just threw that name out there because I was thinking about her this morning. And I said, you would probably want to do business with Heidi Klum because she's got all of this XY's, she's Heidi Klum. But now let's go a little bit deeper here. Let's say that bum had a Harvard degree and he was an extremely successful business person at one point, right? You would never know, right? Now, what if you connected with Heidi Klum and you're ready to sign the paper and you're going to go into business with Heidi Klum and you realize that she is a bitch on wheels? And I use those words. Now, I'm not saying I heard Heidi. I don't know Heidi Klum. She could be a sweetheart. I don't know. But maybe you didn't connect or she didn't connect with you and you thought of her as a bitch on wheels, right? You never know. You never know. And so you have to be consistent on the inside and on the outside if you want an effective brand. And I think this is what you're saying here. Your mindset is the internal stuff, and the external stuff is the marketing. And I should say the strategy is the internal stuff too. And so I see so many people focusing in on the outside. So I had a good friend. He wants to start a business. He's been working in this field for 11 years. He's like, I got a lot of experience. I want to go out and do my own thing. I need a logo and I need some letterhead and I need this, and that. And I said, do you know who your customers are? Do you know, a strategy behind how you're going to generate these leads in the Sparta? No. I just need a logo right now.
Right.
And I'm just like, I'm sorry, I can't help you, because you're going to get to the point where you got a logo that doesn't resonate. You got a logo that's incongruent, and now we got a problem. So here's the one thing I want to ask you, Jay. And here's one of the things. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, I think we're getting better with this, but a lot of entrepreneurs they don't pay attention to the branding, because they say to themselves, if I invest in branding, how is it going to make me more money? Why should I invest in branding? What branding is like logos and websites to them. They don't understand what branding really is. So when people don't understand things, they sort of ignore them. And so what I'm trying to explain, and my mission is, how the hell do we tell entrepreneurs that your branding is directly related to your bottom line?
Yeah, you have to look at it as a foundational component of what you're doing. And what it really does is it sets the tone. It sets the tone for the mission. So if you think about it from this perspective of your mantra, your battle cry, the branding is that, and what it should do is it should empower and fire up you and your people to execute the mission that you've defined during your strategic stuff, right? Which helps everybody keep their mind dialed in as they're executing the marketing, campaigns, which are really more for the acquisition of customers.
Right. Nailed it. So it's funny. I know your heart is very dedicated to marketing, because you know that is one key pillar of the triad, which sure doesn't surprise me at all on how you got involved with the business that I want to start to talk about next, which is guerrilla marketing. And you guys, we'll talk about the event in a couple of minutes. But how did you sort of get involved in that? And talk to me about that.
Yeah. So if you go all the way back to my first business when I was 16, that business, when I started it was 2 years after the first guerrilla marketing book came out. And so, I'm old as dirt now, apparently. That's what
Get out of
I seem
here.
to think. But, I used the guerrilla marketing weapons or tactics to help that business grow. And so that was always something that was, it held a special place in my heart. And, you read the books, and books keep coming out for all these years. And this year is the 34th year of guerrilla marketing. And so next year's the 35th anniversary. There'll be some really interesting stuff that happens next year. But, it always had a special place in my heart. And so as I continued my entrepreneurial journey, as well as kind of my hired gun journey, I always reverted back to how could we do things more effectively, more efficiently, with a focus on profit. And that's really what Guerrilla is all about. It's a mindset that revolves around how you look at your business, how you look at your marketing efforts, your branding efforts. Everything should be with an eye towards effective and efficient and focused on profit. Because if you're not profiting, then you're missing the point of being in business. And so some people say, well, money's not everything, but you can't change the world if you don't have a lot of money. So you got to be able to make an impact where you can. And so that's why it's always been such a big piece of what I'm doing. And the creator, the godfather of guerrilla marketing, J. Conrad Levinson, he was. But have you ever seen Mad Men? Yeah. I'm sure you've. Yeah. Absolutely. So he's like a Chicago version of Don Draper, working for these big ad agencies, and he and his teams created all of the famous characters that like the Jolly Green Giant, the Pillsbury Doughboy, the Sears Die Hard Battery, which isn't a character, but you get the point. Mm-hmm. So there's just a laundry list of all of these things. The Marlboro Man was one of his products, and so they did all of this amazing marketing for these big companies, and he, got tired of living in Chicago in the cold winters and wanted to move to California. And he did that, and he worked remotely for a while, but he eventually retired and started teaching school at UCLA Berkeley. So he's teaching marketing to all of these kids who don't have those big, Fortune 500 style budgets. And that was really the genesis of the very first guerrilla marketing book. Was he was asked by them, how do we market and compete against the big guys when we've got all these startup companies and we don't have any money? And so he went and looked, and there was nothing in the marketplace. No book had been written that would address that issue. And so that was the beginning of that first book, which wasn't called Guerrilla Marketing when he first wrote it, but the title sucked. So he started thinking, how do you make a big impact against an opponent that has a lot more resources than you? Well, that's similar to guerrilla warfare, where essentially, you're kind of like the old style militia going up against the big army, and you've got to be very creative. You've got to adapt, improvise, overcome. You have to be focused on, winning the battle at all costs, kind of thing. And that's really how it got its name. He created that first book. He put it out in the marketplace in '84. It became a runaway hit. I, of course, became aware of it. I was biased towards business as a youngster. I used to fill out those direct response cards in the magazines where you circle the thing and they send you information. Well, you always had to put your name and title and the name of your company and stuff. So I always had a company. I was always CEO, and this is like at 11 years old.
I love it.
And I'd get all this information about all these companies, and I would just read it. I was a voracious reader. And so, I always had that eye towards business. And when I read the book, it just clicked. And, my first business was successful primarily through word of mouth and street team type efforts, which are very guerrilla. And I used all those methods all the way through all of the businesses that I've touched since then, my entire, we'll call it adult life. And it's made a huge difference for so many entrepreneurs around the world. And there's plenty of stories, about how, Jay went around the world helping entrepreneurs with their marketing and stuff. And so he got sick about 4 years ago. and he ended up passing away. And that created kind of a void both in the business as well as the marketplace. And a lot of the guerrilla marketing stuff is timeless. The methods, the reason, the psychology behind what you do never changes. The tool you use changes because we didn't have Facebook 15 years ago, right, or 10 years ago. We didn't have, the iPhone is just now 10 years old. There weren't smartphones 11 years ago. And so the tools change, but what you're actually doing, which is getting people to want to exchange value with you. So you have something of value, they have something of value. Theirs is currency and yours is a product or service. That has never changed. And how you get people to come over the hump and break out of their pattern and decide to buy and spend money with your company versus another company is a total combination of everything from your branding to your execution and how you approach the customers, which is where we get into some of the mindset stuff. Mm-hmm. And so when I realized that the business was, needing some involvement, needing some money, needing to really reinvigorate and get positioned to carry on the torch for another 35 years, I said, I've got to get involved. Mm. And so that's the story in a nutshell. It's made a huge impact on my lives and arguably millions. I think we've sold over 23 million books, translated into 67 languages around the world. So it is a huge, huge piece of what drives that entrepreneurial success around the globe.
Oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. It's almost, I feel like you're giving, it feels like you're giving back almost. It's
yeah, this is one of the things, right, is that Jay, when he started it was really to help his students. He never imagined it would be a runaway bestseller hit around the world. And then, certainly never imagined it would turn into over 50 books translated into all of those languages. And so what happens is when you don't intend for something to be a business, you don't really set it up to sustain itself. And it becomes a really good cash flow lifestyle retirement gig. You get speaking gigs, you go on stages, you talk about some stuff, you're kind of Yoda, right? Jay Abraham does the same thing, right? I mean, he goes around, he sits on stage, and people ask him questions, and he knows a lot, and he can really help people's businesses. But when you don't do that anymore, the business kind of loses momentum. And so really what I'm focused on is creating a sustainable momentum to help entrepreneurs, for decades. And that takes a lot of rework. It takes a lot of reimagination about how a lifestyle brand can become a sustainable business. I heard the sad news about Les Brown a few days ago. He's sick and having surgeries and stuff. And you look at somebody like that, it's like, whoo, how do you sustain that brand? It's all about less on stage, Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Interesting stuff. I love where this is going. We have a couple questions from our Facebook audience that I want to sort of address. And the one was, let me just make sure that I got all of them here. Okay, so the one question is, what time frame do you look at when to expect traction? So
oh yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
So that's a really broad question that's hard to answer with a lot of specificity, but I'll give you my perspective on it.
Sure.
And that is, it's much like the elephant. How do you eat an elephant? One spoon at a time. Right. And so what you have to do is you have to chunk down the business. And this is where having a really crisp strategic and tactical battle planning process in place comes into play. Because if you have these small incremental steps identified, these things that have to happen by a certain date, and those things are assigned to specific resources, then you can manage those small incremental pieces of progress, which is where traction occurs, right? Traction isn't like a cataclysmic event. It is a gradual gripping of the asphalt. And so you start inching forward by millimeters before you take off down the highway at 100 miles an hour, using a burnout metaphor, right? So, yeah, it's, and here's the thing, I think, to tie it all back together is that if you don't chunk your steps, your tactical steps down tight enough, you won't see traction as quickly because you'll be waiting longer for things to happen. So the idea is to always ask the question behind the question, how do I get this into smaller incremental chunks? So smaller little Lego blocks so that I know that we've done that. Okay, we're getting traction. And it's an interesting thing, right? You start to accomplish things and then you feel like accomplishing more things. But if you put these somebody posted something the other day about big, hairy, audacious goals and how they hate the term and stuff. And there are problems with having just that, because if you don't have how you're going to get there, then you miss the whole point. And it's a zillion steps between here and there. And so you need to identify those and then execute against them.
Oh, I love it. Paul Sabaj has another great question. He asks, Jason, what do you look at in determining if a company is worth buying to turn into a powerhouse again? What parts does current owner's attitude play?
It's a lot. In fact, you used the Marcus Lemonis parallel earlier, and what you'll notice with what he does, and you get to see it on TV, and so it's easy to identify. But what he's doing is he's investing in the person. And when things start to go wrong, it's because they're not gelling. And when things go right, it's because they're gelling. And so the mindset of the entrepreneur is the most important piece that determines success or failure in a given situation. That situation could be a relationship with an investor. It could be a relationship with a key employee. It could be a key relationship with a vendor, or the marketplace for that matter, right? You're seeing all kinds of things happen in the news, right? You got Wynn Resorts right now. Steve's taking a beating. And it's the relationship with the marketplace that's in question.
Well, there you go. Paul, take some notes, Paul. That was some great answers to some great questions. And so, I invite the audience on Facebook. I haven't said this in the beginning, but I should have. If you have more questions for Jason, fire them away. And if we can get to a couple more, we will. But I am respectful of time. So
yeah, I think we've got about 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
Or a little less. So let's rock and roll if you got questions.
Yeah. So I'll see if they come through. But if not, I love what you're saying. So let's talk about the guerrilla marketing event coming up in May.
Let's do it. Yeah. So we're so one of the things that Jay always wanted to do is he always wanted to have a gathering of people that practice or want to learn to practice guerrilla marketing and the whole guerrilla mindset. And the idea of a global summit was born. This will be the third Guerrilla Summit, and it's in Orlando. It's May 3rd, 4th, and 5th. And our hotel is just an easy hotel shuttle ride from the airport. It's only a few minutes from the actual airport. And so people can fly into Orlando very easily from anywhere in the world. Mickey loves to have visitors, I've heard. And so they make it easy to get to Orlando. And so people fly into the Orlando airport. They jump on the hotel shuttle. They'll be at the hotel in a few minutes. We've got, the Thursday, Friday, and Saturday is just packed with some really great content. And what's different about the summit from many events is this is not a collection of speakers that don't belong together and they're all talking about different things and they're all trying to get you to buy their different stuff. What this is this is actionable workshop type stuff where you come in, you've got questions, people are going to be presenting, and you're going to walk out with just stacks and stacks of notes and stuff that you can take action on in your business. So it's going to be exciting. And you're going to be there. And we're going to have you on stage talking branding.
I was like, I heard that there was this short bald guy from New Jersey coming down here to speak.
That's right. That's right.
So
no,
guys,
like we talked about earlier, the branding is a big piece of the foundational stuff that sets you up for success or failure. And so having you there to share that with all of the gorillas is going to be awesome.
Yeah, it's going to be it's a pleasure to have the opportunity, and I'm really excited to make an impact and to share my story and to share some key branding insight to help them take their businesses, to the next level, and to really understand that branding is so important in 2018 as things become more and more competitive and more noisy and more, it's getting harder and harder to stand out from the crowd. What's going to help you do all of that is really investing in your branding and taking note of how important branding is to your business and how it's going to excel you in the years to come as technology and the tools get sharper. And how do we survive, right? Had I not make the changes that I made in my business, 5 years in, I would not be here 5 years later. I can't believe I've been in business now for a decade. I'm going on my 11th year, and it's like I had to make the changes along the way or else I'd be dead. And so instead of fighting the change away and, I'm not doing that, I embraced it and I said, how could I use it? It's sort of like jujitsu, if you will. I'm getting these things thrown at me. How could I use that weight to really benefit me and, use it for me? So, that's sort of the thing. So I wanted to make sure we get the plug of the event. Guys, you'll be hearing a lot.
Yeah, for sure. And, the thing is that the event is, because it's so focused on sharing what's working today. A lot of people think, well, guerrilla marketing was written 34 years ago. Well, the first book was written, right? But there's been 50 books. And so a lot of update over the years. And those methods continue to evolve. The tools change, as we mentioned earlier. But what people are going to be sharing is stuff that's working now in digital and offline marketing and advertising, because marketing and advertising are not the same thing, right? They're different. And so people are going to be talking about all the social stuff, how to get, your viral followers, how to do all of that kind of stuff, Facebook advertising, direct mail, survey stuff. There's going to be all kinds of things that will help you with your business. And one of the things that we started last year was these guerrilla talks. So they're like a TED Talk, but what they are is they're people that are doing marketing, leveraging different pieces of guerrilla marketing in their business, and they're going to get up and talk for about 12 minutes about what they've done and what it's done for their business. And then we're filming all of that in high definition, and they get to use that for their sizzle reel, which helps them with their branding, right?
There you go.
Gives them an asset. And then the people that participate in the guerrilla talks will have a chapter in a multi-author a guerrilla book, a co-authored guerrilla book. So they'll get their chapter, and that book will become a bestseller, and they'll be known as a best-selling guerrilla marketing author.
That's awesome.
So really solid.
That's awesome. I again, Jay, I love what you're doing. I think you've been such an impact to the entrepreneurial world, whether somebody has said that to you or not. I look up to you as quite the mentor. I feel like you've found your passion in life. I mean, to have a brick and mortar at the age of 16, let's not that, like, we kind of just glazed over that, but I was like, did he just say that?
Yeah. Well, at the summit, I'll tell the story because it always gets a lot of laughs. And
so I'm excited. I'm excited to hear about it. So, but Jay, I know you're a busy guy. I appreciate you taking the time to speak to my Facebook audience and my podcast audience, and I'm really looking forward to serving your audience at the Guerrilla Marketing event in May. And I just look forward to doing some great things with you guys and your organization in the future as well. And I thank you for your time. It's very, very informative.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity and look forward to hanging out with you in Orlando.
Awesome. So real quick, brother. Guys, you got it. Before we leave, I just want to do some quick housekeeping things. If you haven't joined the Brand Doctors Hangout yet on Facebook, it's a group that has about 350 entrepreneurs in it right now that are all helping each other, build better brands and businesses. So head over there right now, and become part of that group. It's a great group of individuals. I only hang around with the best, and the best is in that community. And last but not least, if you haven't shared this podcast with a friend or a colleague yet, please do. And I truly appreciate and thank you in advance for doing that. I'm here to help you take your brand to the next level, and so are my guests. And so that is our mission, and that is what we are going to do day in and day out. So have an awesome day, guys. Thanks for listening, and I'll catch you on the next episode. Talk soon.
You've been listening to the Brand Doctor Podcast with Henry Kaminski Jr. To get your appointment with the doctor, visit Brand Audit at www.uniquedesignz.net.